And eventually I just thought, wacky. Because wacky is one of those words that it can be taken both ways. I wanted a word that, some people sometimes use it as a negative thing, but it's not. And some people use it as a great thing and they celebrate it. So when I realised that there was no other wacky zine, I was like, yes, that's my name, Wacky. That just sums it up for me.
I love the name Wacky. I think because I'm wacky.
So tell me about you and about Wacky.
So first of all, I'm an artist. I'm also a designer, an illustrator, a writer sometimes, even a filmmaker sometimes. So I kind of love doing lots of different things. Wacky really was just a way of me being able to spread an important message. Using print publications and things like that, I found in the past a really great way of spreading that message.
What exactly is Wacky?
So Wacky is basically a community of people who celebrate self-expression, creative expression, and being really different. We live in a society that it makes us believe that being different in any way to this kind of one model of a person is a bad thing, and it's not something that people speak about, really. Essentially that's what Wacky is trying to do. It's trying to not only make people realise that being different is not a bad thing, but actually it's complete opposite. It's an amazing thing, and people should be proud to be different, and that's what Wacky is trying to do. It's trying to help people who maybe haven't discovered who they are to just stop holding themselves back and realise that being different and diverse is a great thing, essentially. I've always loved things that are made from print, and I've always loved being able to have something that's in your hands and physical. So I always knew I wanted to try and bring back this physical magazine with kind of an artsy vibe, which is hence the name zine, which a lot of people don't know what zine is, but it's just basically a handmade magazine dating back to kind of the 80s. At the moment I realised I wanted to do a magazine. Sadly, when after my father died, it brought to my attention there's so many people that are suffering in our world. After my dad died, I realised the epidemic of men taking their own lives. And after 2016 was when I realised that this was such a huge issue, and I really wanted to try and help people that were struggling like him. And I thought doing a magazine would be a great way to do it. The topic is such a dark and difficult topic to address that I didn't really know how to do it. So the moment I kind of came up with Wacky as a concept was someone said to me that he wanted to be eccentric and he loved eccentric people. And it was literally the penny dropped for me, because all of my life I'd always thought of the word eccentric as being a bad thing, because it had always been put to me in that way, like people say, oh, he's eccentric, a bit crazy, like. And I realised that, I started looking into the meaning of the word, and it doesn't mean anything negative at all. In fact, it probably means the opposite. It just depends on your viewpoint. Eccentric just means off-centre. It just means away from the centre of what everyone else is doing, away from normal. So for me, that was the moment I had to start Wacky, and I knew that I needed to celebrate this topic and address well-being in a more positive way, in a more kind of bright and colourful way. The mission statement would be to help people to be their weirdest, wackiest selves and not care at all about what other people think of them, and just be able to live their lives to the fullest. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I think so many people in this world don't know their real selves. So really that's the mission for Wacky, to try and help people to start to discover their selves, and not just that, but just be as expressive as they possibly can and not hold themselves back because of what other people would think of them. To me, inclusion means celebrating every single human being, no matter what tiny differences they have. And it means making people feel they are not different in a negative way. They're part of something, and that something is obviously being a human being. But I think the fact that we as a society look so much at the details and look so much at race and colour, when really we are all part of the same, and we need to remember that. And for me, inclusion means celebrating the fact that we're all human beings and not making one person feel slightly bad about themselves just because they don't have whatever it is, straight hair, blonde hair, just because they're not skinny. It's making you realise that every skin colour, every shape, every single individual is incredible just the way they are. And it's making those people feel included as part of society and not like that they don't fit into the mould. There is no mould and there shouldn't be. Mental health and mental well-being has really driven Wacky itself, but it's a way to we try and live it through every single thing we do. And for me, just being able to help people be different and for me that has such a great effect on people's mental well-being. From my experience of watching my dad deal with his own mental illness, and then after that dealing with my own kind of issues of identity and trying to be who I am, and realising that I didn't really know who I was either, but also dealing with my own mental health after losing my father and my own grief, and realising that actually it's something that we do always. We try and hide how we're feeling all the time. If we don't hide how we're feeling and we can be more open, we don't hide anything about ourselves, how we're feeling, how we're just who we want to be, then that will have positive effects on our mental health, because we're going to feel like we have a real sense of self. Whereas if you're acting all the time at someone you're not, eventually that's over 20 years, 30 years, that's going to have such a detrimental effect on you, because you're going to feel lost. You're going to feel like no one knows your true self. You can't tell anyone who you are or how you feel. And you're going to feel isolated. I'm trying to start by just small, but person by person, just helping people to realise that being themselves in the long run will help them and help their mental health. To me, being an outsider, it means someone who's different from the rest of society. Being an outsider, that word shouldn't even really exist, but it exists because there's boundaries and there's margins for being in our society for who we should be. Anyone who doesn't fit into that mould or in those boundaries are considered an outsider. Anyone who doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and it's difficult to kind of try and reclaim that, but I think it's important to do that and to identify that being an outsider is actually sometimes being able to have the outside perspective and not be in the middle. I think it's really just, for me, it's kind of being able to talk to myself in a positive way every day, and things like just being like, come on darling, you can do it. You can do it, and you're fine. It's okay. Don't worry. Just talking to myself in things like that. And I think it's, for me, it's not really one real mantra, but it's just the everyday things that you say to yourself to remind yourself how amazing you are. So I think it's just, no matter whatever you need on that day, I think it's important to remember to not speak to yourself in negative ways. And if I ever feel like I want to do that, I just look at myself in the mirror and I just tell myself I'm great and I can do this. And as Wacky, it really is just be your most authentic self, really. There's nothing that sums it up for me the most, I think, because if you can be as authentic as possible and figure out that authentic self, then you're winning. I've definitely always been too afraid of what others think to go all out there, but I think I've gone through stages, which is why it resonates with me so much, because when I was a bit younger, maybe 18, or even I was going to charity shops buying all these clothes, and I was at art college for the first time and I was just being expressive, and I went to art uni. But then at some point when I moved to London, and I was even during art uni, I started thinking, these colourful clothes and these wacky clothes, they're not really, I feel like people aren't going to take me seriously, they make me look childish, I need to change myself. And it was almost just a subconscious thing. I just stopped wearing these colourful clothes and I started wearing dark colours and jeans and boots. And before I knew it, that was all I wore. My whole wardrobe was filled with these black clothes, and it was really depressing. And it happened even before, I lost my dad. And I think obviously after that, wearing black just became, it reflected my mood so much. This is why I think it was Jo of All Ears who, she talks about how, seeing young girls and wanting to tell them you don't have to be like, the men that you see in Suits. And she did exactly that without ever saying that to me, because she walked into that office and she was wearing all these colourful clothes and so vibrant. And it changed something in me. Something switched, and I just thought, so you can wear colourful clothes.
You can be yourself.
And still, you can be yourself. You can still be bright and stand out and not be judged in a negative way. After that, I started buying colourful clothes. Maybe I didn't wear them for a good while, but they were sitting there, and now I'm finally wearing them, and it really helps me. As an artist, I want to look a bit wacky, I want to look a bit eccentric. So yeah, I guess I never thought of myself as eccentric, but after I realised that eccentric wasn't a bad thing, and I had to start addressing these unconscious beliefs that I had, that being different was bad. And it's not even like I always had these beliefs, but that they'd been developing in the last few years. I felt like I had to change myself into this person that was someone who could work in an office, someone who'd be taken seriously. I was already blonde with curly hair. It already took away from me looking professional. So, but after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just try, and I don't care what people think. I'm just going to keep being me anyway. So I've been sort of returning back to myself, as creative as I could look, because I think for me, I just love that. Even though, some people don't necessarily, it's been a difficult journey for me to sort of not mind people commenting and being like, people always comment, but you learn to realise that's a great thing, and it's nice to be able to change people's lives in that way, brighten someone's day. So I think I think I took a lot of inspiration from the people I interviewed through Wacky, and it's helped me on my personal journey. I want people to realise while reading it that, there are things about themselves that they're suppressing, and maybe they want to be a bit more, they want to have a certain style, or they want to dye their hair blue, and they wouldn't, but things that they might have wanted to do but chose not to do it because of other people. I really want to try and help people to skip some of the years that it's taken me to realise that I'm not being myself and I'm not being my authentic self, because I truly didn't realise. I cared so much more about what other people thought of me than I thought. I honestly thought that it didn't matter to me, but it's a constant journey, obviously, for everyone trying to figure themselves out. But I think you get to a point where you think that you know yourself, but you don't, and there's so much more to learn. And through Wacky, I really want to try and help people, almost stop them in their tracks and make them just reassess how they act in social situations, and make them just reflect on yourself for a minute. And just because I think not enough people are doing that. We accept ourselves for who we are, and we think this is me, but actually maybe we've been viewing ourselves based on other people, based on our families, based on society, and all of these things that we think we should be. We think we should look like this because a woman is meant to look this way for someone else. But I just realised I wasn't living my life, or even some of the beliefs that I had weren't mine. And it's been a slow process for me, but I think, I want people to try and to do that by reading Wacky. I want people to start realising that they're not being themselves. I think I want them to start that journey earlier than I did, because I think it's so beneficial. And, if I could have started that journey before I was 26, I would have. Before I started going to school, I was expressive. I said what I wanted. I did what I wanted. I explored. I brought toys into school until the moment when I realised people were taking the mick out of me. I realised that I shouldn't just have curly hair all the time, this big frizz, so I just tied it back. I started, it's being at school, and when people tease you and tell you that, and make you realise that you're not great who you are, or make you think that you're not great as you are, and you start looking every single detail of yourself and changing it just to either blend in or try and fit in. I think you kind of have a choice to make. Are you going to fit in with all these other people that you don't fit in with, or are you just going to dull yourself down so people don't notice that you're different? And for me, that was what I did, and I'd been dulling myself down for a very long time, because I think it's really hard to stop doing that when you started doing that from such a young age, at like 11 years old, really. You just keep doing that throughout your whole school years. So by the time I left at 16, you know, I think I forgot who I was, you know, and it was a real journey to try and relearn that. So I think, you know, if I know that obviously school culture is never going to change, but I know that this is why I think Wacky's so important now, because I think if it was hard then when I was at school, and I didn't have social media at school, I didn't have social media till I was 18, and it was still difficult for me, and I still compared myself and still wanted to look a certain way. Imagine what it's like for people who have never for kids who have never known a life without social media. My cousin is 10, and she, you know, is she ever going to figure out who she is? Has she even had a chance to start? Has her whole life been completely just driven by comparison and comparing yourself to other people, and instead of just trying to figure out your own essence and what makes you happy and how you can express yourself, you know. And I think obviously it's a very fine line between figuring out if you're doing something for other people or if you're doing it for yourself, and obviously there's no way of knowing that for sure, but apart from just experimenting and playing and trying things out. And if you never get a chance to try things out because you're constantly acting or wearing a mask to fit in with the other people around you, then that is just you're never going to explore yourself. And I think it's so important to do that. I talked just then about, you know, obviously the negative sides of social media, all the comparison. And to be honest with you, I don't like to say that social media is bad, because I don't believe it is. I wouldn't have met all the people that I met if it hadn't been for social media. And there's no way that Wacky would exist without it. Nobody had that in the past. So if you were a bit different, you just go, okay, I'm different, but I know that I am, you know. Whereas now, I suppose you see that you're different, and you see all the other people on Instagram that are also not like you. But then there's also the other side. If you can find those communities online and on Instagram, instead of, you know, you curate who you follow in a way that's going to help empower you rather than bringing you down. You know, if you're looking at people in your feed that aren't making you feel good, then yeah, that's negative. But, you know, if we can celebrate these images, obviously for me, Wacky is about celebrating these people, and it's about celebrating the imagery and the things that they believe and the things they say to help other people. But, you know, that's why, you know, if we can use social media to do that, then the world will be a better place if we start celebrating these people, you know, and saying just how incredible they are just for being different, you know, because we do that with celebrities, but we can't do it with normal people. A celebrity looks wacky and different, and that's an amazing thing. They're rich and famous. Well, if everyone dressed like that, you could feel just as powerful as that person. But you have to get past the people taking the mick and teasing you and telling and saying it's bad. You know, you just have to say, well, no, I'm different, and you have to move past that somehow. But we also need to help raise awareness to say that it's not easy. None of this is easy. It's not going to be a comfortable process, and that's the whole point. This is why so many people don't try and go against the grain and be a black sheep, because it's really hard. It's a really difficult thing. But as long as you can feel, this is why Wacky is, for me, it's a community, that it's important that it's a community, because it's so important for people to feel that they're not alone, and that they can, you know, if they want to be a bit more different, then they have other communities and people they can tap into and speak to empower them and help bring them up. And I think that's what I want to do.
One more question. Where do you think, have you ever thought about the science behind this? I mean, is it the human condition that naturally creates this idea that you have to fit into a mold to be accepted?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely thought about it, and I would love to, you know, I obviously have not got to the bottom of this, about where does it begin? Is it because human beings want to fit in inherently, or is it because of the Western society we live in? You know, and I think, who knows really? I think probably, yeah, in a way. Like, I do think, you know, I was researching how, you know, this sort of herd mentality, obviously you go to school, it's all herd mentality. Everybody copies everybody, what they're wearing, down to the last detail. And, you know, even style and sort of fashions, like fashion sense, you know, it can be very individual, or it can just be you're following a trend, you know. And I think if you're following a trend, you're just following other people, and you've got to try and distinctify what's the difference. Are you just trying to fit in? Because I think it's a natural thing to want to feel understood by people, And if you're in a room with people who are very different to you, you're going to want to try and be a bit more like them so that you can fit in.
So you can be accepted.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard. I've been in workplaces where all the girls my age, they don't get me, they don't understand me, I don't understand them, and I might try at first, but I realise it's never going to work. And you have to just not give up and realise that there are going to be rooms where you're sitting in and people aren't going to like you, and that's just part and parcel of it. They're not going to accept you, and if that's why I think most people conform, because it's so much easier just to be accepted by everyone. It's so much easier. Imagine living in a world where everyone likes you.
Yeah.
That's great. Everyone wants that, but it's not achievable, because to please everybody, it's just not possible. You're never going to.
Absolutely.
I've published the first issue. So the second issue will be coming in the next couple of months. So the first issue was about eccentricity as a topic. The next issue is about collecting and maximalism as a response to minimalism, and just people making me feel guilty all the time for having lots of stuff. But actually there's so many positive things about it. So that's what Wacky's exploring next. I think mainly because of all the eccentrics I spoke to and have been speaking to and continue to speak to, I realised I'm not alone in this obsessive collecting. So it's definitely something I wanted to explore for a while.